Hey, what's going on everyone? Sam here with Lake Pro. Guys, today's video we're going to be talking about power, action, and rod length, what all those three things have to do with making a rod. Now, a lot of the times people always come in and, you'll hear the phrase, oh yeah, just get like a 7-foot medium heavy. It's the best all-around rod. Well, if you're watching this video, I'm sure you're looking for something more specialized for what you're throwing. I've got several rods in my tackle locker that don't come out most of the time during the year, but in certain times of the year, let's say I'm throwing a jerkbait, it will come out and I need that specific rod with that specific power, action, and length to get the job done. But before we get into the video, guys, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. We're gonna be pumping out a whole lot of content, and if you wanna see the best deals on rods, reels, tackle, and accessories, head over to lakeprotackle.com, as well as looking at our lake reports. Guys, if you have a lake near you that isn't on the list, let us know if there's someone that we can reach out to try to get on the Lake Pro program. The Lake Pro program is an amazing opportunity. You get discounts on tackle, and we've got weekly giveaways to our Lake Pros. So guys, check all that out at lakeprotackle.com. Guys, let's get into the video. All right, guys, so we've got a couple rods here. They're all medium heavies, but there's something totally different about all of them. They've got different actions. They've got the same actions. They've got different actions, but they all perform differently. So these are all medium heavies here. Let's start with the most moderate action and kind of go into why it is what it is, basically. So power, action, and rod length all come into one, into a singular rod. And rod companies, they're all different. They rate their things differently. So when I like to get a new rod, I want to feel that rod to make sure it's the right one for me. A lot of companies now are also making rods that are technique specific, so they have their recommendations on if it's a jig rod or if it's a chatterbait rod or if it's a weightless Senko rod. They're coming out with those ratings themselves, but really if you go to a company that doesn't have those specifically made rods and you get hit with a 7'6" medium heavy fast action or extra fast action, here's how to diagnose that and kind of what to look for. So this guy right here, this is a Daiwa Tatula Elite Rod, medium heavy, 7'2", and it doesn't have an action on it. Now this guy does have the crankbait rating on it. So on the rod it says for cranking small and medium crankbaits. Now most of the time when you're throwing a crankbait, a fast action is pretty good. However, this guy right here, I know from experience, it has a thicker blank on it. It's still a medium heavy, so when you're throwing medium heavies, when you're throwing heavier stuff, you want a heavier rod most of the time. So if you're flipping a 2-ounce weight in Florida, you're probably gonna have a heavy or an extra heavy. If you're throwing something super light like a 1.0 square bill, you're probably gonna have a medium rod or medium light rod, and you're gonna match that action with what you want. So being open to different companies is definitely a plus. Now a lot of the times, since big companies sign on pros, they will have a lot of different rod varieties for them to choose from. So, it's not always a big deal to, stay with one company. If you're open to trying new companies, it's definitely worth doing the research and trying to find a rod that best suits you. So back to this guy here. This is a 7'2" medium heavy cranking rod. So it's gonna be, and it doesn't have an action rating on it. So it's a medium heavy for small and medium crankbaits. So that's gonna be anywhere from like a quarter-ish or 3/8 ounce to around a ½ ounce, maybe a little more than that. Standard square bills are gonna be almost a ½ ounce when you're throwing them, but they do catch a lot of wind. So having I would call this a moderate action, almost a moderate slow action, and I'll show you how to determine action a little later in the video. So this guy is gonna be a more moderate action. Now it doesn't say it again, but flexes completely differently from something like the Veritas here. This is an Abu Garcia Veritas, and it is gonna be on the stiffer end of medium heavies just because it doesn't actually say, but it's gonna be a fast, extra fast action on it. So this guy right here, and we'll do a little rod test comparison. So the way I like to determine how a rod is properly gauged for power is I like to feel, when does that rod blank start to bend a little bit? So I'm going down like guide to guide, and we're on between the 4th set of guides, and there's a little bend right there. So that's about, I would give it halfway, almost halfway down the rod, and it starts to bend. Now that medium heavy, you're going to be able to throw bigger stuff on this, not terribly big. You know, I wouldn't go up to like a 3/4 ounce chatterbait or anything, but again, rod companies do have ratings on these where it says a 1/4 to 1 ounce lure, which I don't know if I'd go up to an ounce, and then 12 to 20 pound line. So this guy right here, I would call it a fast, extra fast action, and I'll show you again later how I like to determine that. So these two right here, this is the SLX rod by Shimano, and this is a Dobyns Fury rod. They're both, actually one's a 7'2" medium heavy, and then the other one is gonna be a 7'3" medium heavy. But they have very similar actions and powers on them. Both bend about 4 eyes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 eyes down, and they have a very solid standard action. Now these are great starting rods for people because again, it's a medium heavy. You can throw Texas rigs, jigs, lighter stuff. You can even throw some crankbaits, great for spinnerbaits and chatterbaits, and that's what a lot of people start off throwing. Now when you get into something really light like a 1.0 crankbait, you're not gonna be able to throw it as well, and if you try to throw like a 1 ounce jig on it, it's gonna be way too heavy for that rod. So let's go ahead and show you how these actions and powers compare to each other. All right, so this is my test on how I like to determine the actions of a rod. If they don't say them immediately, you know, for slower actions, you know, like say moderate is generally what you get action, a moderate action, moderate fast action for crankbaits. That would be something like this Daiwa here. Again, it's made for crankbaits, but it doesn't exclusively say the action on it. So how I like to determine it is I'll hold the rod in one hand like this, and what I'll do is I'll hold it real nice and tight. So I'm gonna hit the butt end of the rod, and I like to look at the tip. If it's moving really slow and it takes a while to get back to normal, it still hasn't even stopped yet completely, then I know it's gonna be a slower action on it. So when I'm setting the hook, that rod's gonna sweep and it's gonna pull into the fish and then set entirely in there so that barb gets past and that hook gets penetrated into that fish's mouth. So it's having a more moderate action's great for something like chatterbaits and moving baits and stuff where you don't want to rip it out of their mouth entirely. So following suit like we did back on the wall there, this is the Veritas. Other end of the spectrum, very fast action. So this is going to be like an extra fast action. Hold that rod again. I'm going to hit it in the back. And 3, 2, 1, it's already back to normal. You know, back to where it was. So this extra fast action is great for high impact stuff. So if I'm flipping a jig into something, having that fast action, you know, if they get bit right off the bat, you know, it's gonna be immediately that hook's getting driven into that fish's mouth, and that fish is getting out of that cover like super, super quick. So the connection from your line, when you set the hook, it's gonna be going a lot faster. So again, high impact stuff, Texas rigs, jigs, Carolina rigs sometimes, depending on how you marry the length of the rod with it. But most of the time, having that fast action is going to be for setting the hook really hard. Now in the middle here, this is the SLX again. Do the same test. I'm going to hit the back, and you know, not quite as fast as that Veritas, but a little bit slower or a little bit faster than that Daiwa. So that's how I like to test the actions, and the actions really determine how specifically you want to fish. Now for me, like something like a jerkbait, I like to have a 6'8" because I'm in a boat and I don't want to slap the water, so it makes it easier for that. Now I have a medium heavy rod, which is kind of more of a medium. It's about a mix, but it allows me to get a good snap out of the rod, and I don't have to impart as much work on that lure by doing a full, you know, like a KVD, he uses his whole arm when he uses a jerkbait. I literally just twitch with my wrist because that rod, it's heavy enough, it has enough backbone to impart that action on the jerkbait as it goes through. Now it is a moderate action rod, so when I do set the hook, the rod bends enough to where I can play that fish. You know, it's slower than just a traditional, like that Abu Garcia here. Now, for example, I do love fishing Carolina rigs and big jigs. I have a 7'6" medium heavy, but it's a fast action, so it's a long enough rod. It pulls in a lot more line, and I don't need a heavy rod because a lot of the times, if I do have a heavy rod fast action, really long rod, I'm bringing in a lot of line and it's immediate connection from me setting the hook to that fish. So I've bent out hooks on really long rods with heavy actions. I've even just straight broken off on nothing when I set that hook. So I like to marry my power, length, and action all together. So hopefully this video has helped you kind of determine, if you're looking for a new rod, what you want to use it for. So if you're building, so hopefully this video has helped you determine how to, build a rod in a way to where you can have your power, you can have your action, you can have your length, all in one, just to create that perfect rod for that situation. Now I know this video is a little bit longer, but guys, I love talking about different actions and stuff, different powers, and how to marry those all together into a perfect rod for you, for your situation. There's a whole lot of rod companies out there that you probably haven't even heard of, but if you do your research and look for, if you're looking for something specific, they might have it. So again, if you're open to looking at different companies, definitely do that. Don't be scared to look into the higher price range, because a lot of the time those higher priced rods are made specifically for something. You take like Megabass, their rods, like the Windbuster and the spinning, or the, I don't even know, shoot, there's so many technique specific rods that they have, where they have odd actions and powers that you don't see all the time, like a 6/8 medium and a fast action, or a, I don't know, like a 7'5" medium heavy and a slow action. Those companies will have more specifically tailored rods to a situation. So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments, follow us on social media, and we'll see you next time.